My name is Robert Elgin Hanna. I was born in Fergus, Ontario, and that's where I learned the game because everybody in Fergus and surrounding territory played lacrosse. Fergus was a lacrosse town. So we all played lacrosse, and even we're allowed to take our sticks to school and play lacrosse at school and bounce the ball off the school wall and didn't have the teachers yelling and shouting at you and stuff like that. Everybody just played lacrosse. We played hockey and we played lacrosse, and all my friends played lacrosse, and it was just natural to have a lacrosse stick and play lacrosse, and we did, and we grew up together from a young age, and we just all played together, you know. And then the Fergus Thistles had a senior B team, I guess it was, which we idolized, and those guys lived in town, so we knew them, and they used to come out and play with us on Sundays and Saturdays and stuff like that, and so you just wanted to play. Russ Black, Heck McKenzie, those are a couple names I remember, yeah. I bought my first stick and I paid a whopping $5 for it.
Did you?
Yes. My late wife, Mary passed away 2 years ago. We have 2 children, Rebecca, who's the eldest, Rob, who's my son, and Rob has 5 children, Megan, who's 22, the twins, Kate and Jenna, who are 20, Malcolm is 18, and Mallory is 12. And Megan played lacrosse for about 7 or 8 years in Bowmanville or Clarington. Kate and Jenna never played. Malcolm, rather, played lacrosse. Mallory has not played lacrosse. Megan is still active in lacrosse because, like some people, she got involved in refereeing, and she's still refereeing today. She refereed this past summer, and she did a lot of timekeeping when she's living here in St. Catharines now, but when she was at home in Bowmanville, she did a lot of timekeeping as well, for the Redmond, for the junior C team in Clarington, for the junior Bs and stuff like that. So there's been quite a bit of involvement in lacrosse. And of course, Rob, my son, he played junior for Scarborough, junior A with Etobicoke, and then he played senior. He went out west one year, first year I guess it was, that he played in '88 with Coquitlam, and then came back and played with Brooklyn in '89 and '90. Had hurt his knee and kind of left for a year or two, came back another year, but only played a few games and the knee wouldn't stand up. So Becky wanted to play lacrosse, but there weren't any girls lacrosse. And so she took up martial arts and is a black belt in karate. Outside of lacrosse, I worked for the Scarborough Board of Education for 3 years as a teacher, vice principal, and principal. Well, in the beginning, I moved around a lot. When we moved to Bradford, Ontario, there wasn't any lacrosse. And my dad was kind of a lacrosse buff, and there was a chap there living in Bradford named Nick Burnside, who had played a fair bit of lacrosse. So they got a team organized, and we played not in an OLA league, but in a league up around there. There was Alliston, Bolton, and Beaton in the league, and that was kind of in the fall, and that was well, I was playing in it when I was, I guess, 17, but a lot of the guys were in their 20s or even 30s sort of thing. So it was men's lacrosse, and a number of my buddies played in it as well. And then when we moved to Newmarket, I still played in Bradford. And then I had played my minor in Fergus. And then I saw an ad in the newspaper, new junior A team looking for lacrosse players. So I answered the ad, and that was the fateful day that I met Mr. Jim Bishop. And he was starting the Green Gales, and that was in '52, I think. And we played in Oakville, practiced at the old bowl in Sunnyside, which was mainly sand. So when you come out of there, you were pretty dirty. And this is one of the few times I ever got one over on Bishop, because after practice, you had to run from the box out to the Humber River and back. I still have never made that full trip. He doesn't know that, or never did know that. So, and then after the Green Gales, we played in a year in Oakville and then moved to Newmarket, and they were a couple years there. We had a little disagreement. I liked to get on the floor, and in those days Jim didn't want me on the floor, or other guys who were fairly large people. He didn't think we had the stamina and stuff to play as the smaller players did. So we played an overtime game in Long Branch, and I got about 4 or 5 shifts. And we played in Newmarket the next night, and I got 4 or 5 shifts. And I decided I would pack in lacrosse. So I quit the team. He phoned me a number of times, wanted me to come back, and I said no. And so then I wasn't playing, and then that's how I got Turk Davis with the Scarborough Maitlands. He called me, and they were an intermediate team, and he asked me to play for them. I thought, oh, okay. So I went down and played with Scarborough Maitlands in the old outdoor box at St. John's Training School at Kingston Road and Victoria Park. And then we moved from Maitlands to Scarborough Arena. Normie Gare, who's a Hall of Famer, was our coach. And we played in Scarborough Arena for a while. And then Normie wanted us to move to Mimico, because that's where obviously he was from. So we did. We moved to Mimico, and we played there. And it was at Scarborough where I met Kenny Crawford. And from there on, he and I pretty well played together wherever we played. And so we played with Mimico, and I think we were Senior B, and we played an interlock with Senior A, because there only were about 3 Senior B teams, and there were about 3 or 4 Senior A teams. So we played an interlock with them. And then in 1959, we moved to Dixie Arena and became the Long Branch Combines, and we played 1 year of Senior A there. And then the next year, 1960, we moved to Port Credit as the Port Credit Sailors. And I was supposed to play there, but a lot of my Greengale buddies decided we should have an intermediate Senior B team in Newmarket. And I said I was going to play Senior A in Port Credit. And so they got my dad to be the manager of the team. So one day he said to me, have you signed with Port Credit? And I said, not yet, Dad. And he said, well, sign right here. You're going to play with the Greengales in Newmarket. He said, sign here. Yeah, okay, Dad. So then we went to the first practice, and we're out on the floor, ready to practice. I'm looking around, and all the guys are there. I said, who's coaching us, by the way? And they said, you are. So now I became the playing coach of this team. And we played intermediate, and intermediate in those days was 21 and over. It wasn't like it is today. So we had 1 season there, and then we did okay on the floor, but in the stands were our wives and girlfriends and things like that. So that was the end of that. And then I went back to Port. Oh, by the way, Port Credit won the Mann Cup that year, which my buddies never let me forget. And I played with Port Credit in 61, 2, and 3. And then we went to have a pop at the local watering hole after the season. And Elmer Lee was the coach, and he was giving a little rundown on the season. He said, and some of the older guys like Crawford and Hanna will be retiring. And I looked at Red, and he looked at me, and I said, were you going to retire? He said, no. Were you? I said, no. Looks like we are. So we left, and we knew we weren't going back to Sailors. So I was prepared to retire. I was 63, what would I be, 31, I guess, yeah. or 60, yeah, somewhere around there. Anyhow, I was teaching at a school on Danforth Road, and this one day in the early spring, Red came in, Crawford, and he says, "We're going to play in Brooklyn." I said, "You might be playing in Brooklyn." "I'm not." He said, "We're going to play in Brooklyn." "No, I'm not." He says, "I'm the playing coach." I said, "We're going to play in Brooklyn." And we went to Brooklyn, and we had great years. I played 64, 65, 66, 67, and in 64, 65 we were in the Mann Cup final, and in 67 we were in the Mann Cup final. We won't talk about 66. Both in 64 and 65 we had 3-1 leads, and I still haven't won a Mann Cup. Really, yeah. So they came back, we were playing, in 64 we were playing the Bellies, and they came back and won. And in 66, or 67 we were playing Vancouver, and they came back and won. So anyhow, after that, in 68, I played pro with the Detroit Olympics and was captain of the team. And I could tell you a long story about that. Bishop called me because we had got together in Brooklyn. We hadn't really spoken after all this time. And he one night asked me to, we always had a little party after the games in Brooklyn. And he asked me to come outside. He wanted to talk to me. And we got outside and he said, "You know, Bob, you're a better player than I thought you were." And I said, "I always knew that, Jim." And he said, "No, I'm serious." And I said, "So am I." And he said, "Okay." So we kind of got back together, and then when the Pro League came in, he phoned me and he said, "Have you heard about the Pro League?" And I said, "Well, I've heard a little bit about it." He said, "Well, the draft is coming up in a week, and I'm probably going to draft you." And I said, "Oh, okay." He says, "Do you think we get along?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure we could." And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Well, I don't know about you, Jim, but I've matured a lot over the years." So he drafted me. And then we had the camps, which just about killed me, because I was 34 then. And he phoned me after I should go back. He phoned me after he drafted me. He said, "I've drafted you, but I don't think you can make the team." "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah." So when I got off the phone, Mary said to me, "What did he say?" He said, he doesn't think I can make the team." I said, "I'm going to make the team that kills me." And it just about did. I got a rowing machine and I started rowing every day. I was exercising and the whole thing. And we had our 2-a-days in Oakville. And that, you know, with Bishop's practices, they weren't easy. They were not easy. You ran a lot. I ran an awful lot. And so anyhow, we had a practice in the morning, an hour practice in the afternoon. Then we had Lloyd Percival speak to us about conditioning and being in shape, and he was sitting on the board smoking a cigarette talking to us about this. And then we had a game that night. Now Bishop was broadcasting the junior hockey games in Oshawa, so he was in Sarnia or someplace doing the broadcast, so he wasn't there. Well, I was so stiff after the 2 practices that I went home, because there wasn't that much traffic in those days, and I sort of had to crawl into the house. Mary got me into the bathtub, and we had an Epsom salts and all that kind of stuff. Went back out, played the game. After the game, I went to Frank Wilbur, who was the assistant general manager, I think he was, and I said, "Frankie, I'm finished. Here's the equipment." So the next day, Bishop called me, "What's going on?" I said, "Hey, Jim, I'm too old for this." No, I'll make you, well, you'll live 10 years longer, blah, blah, blah. I said, "I'm not sure I want to live 10 years longer." So anyhow, he had to keep in touch with Mary, because when I would come home, she'd say, "The Olympics are practicing tonight in Oakville." "So?" "Well, you gonna go out?" "No." "And then the Olympics are practicing here." "The Olympics are practicing here." So one night she said, "The Olympics are practicing at the Civic tonight at 8 o'clock. Yeah, okay. What's that mean to me? I'm not playing for them." "Well, I thought you might like to go out and watch a practice." So I said no. And about 7:45, I said, "Oh, let's go out and watch the practice." So walked into the Civic at the top, which looked down over the floor. He was running the practice. He looked up, he waved, I waved. Next thing I know, he's standing beside me, he's got his hand out, he says, "Welcome back." I said, "I'm not back." He said, "Oh, you're back." And I was at the next practice. But then he didn't sign me until we were going to play our first game in about 4 days. We had a practice on the Saturday up in Brooklyn. And I wasn't signed. I said to Mary before I left, "I think he's going to cut me today." So he said to me towards the end of practice, "I want to see you after." I said, "Okay." So went into the room and sat down. He said, "I want to get you signed." Oh, okay. So we got the contract and we were getting like, I think $50 a game and some bonuses because we went on a Western swing, and if we won some more games, I got more money. I got money for losing weight. And then he finally said to me, "I want you to be captain." I said, "No, I'm not going to be your captain." He says, "No, I want you to be my captain." I said, "No, I'm not going to be your captain." And he said, "I'm not asking you to do it for free. I'm going to pay you." I said, "Oh, how much are you going to pay?" And he told me, and I said, "No, you've got a captain." So I regretted that decision, but I played. So then that season lasted 1 year, and then the next year we had the sort of supposed to be a semi-pro league, and I was going to coach and play in Kitchener. But I had hurt my knee in practice with Detroit, and I didn't play much. I'd had it operated on and stuff. So I played a few games because we were short players. We had a money man who was going to pay and all this stuff, and then just as the season started, he disappeared and left us high and dry, no money. And Jimmy Webb was our GM, and he left us too, so that left yours truly running the team. So we got it going, and I had a meeting with the players and said, "Look, we haven't got any money." Told them the story, and they all stayed for except for about 2, which was good. So we went on from there. And then that league folded up, thank God. And then that was in '69. And then Jim phoned me in a little bit later and said, "I'd like you to coach the Gales," because he was going to the Red Wings as a vice president, you see, and he had to move to Detroit. So I said, "Okay," and you know, they've won 7 Minnow Cups in a row. I'm taking over a good squad. Well, when I got there and we got out on the floor, I found out the good squad I had 2 guys left from those teams, and we were an all-new team. So that year, I think we made the playoffs, but we wound up down. The next year we ended first. And so I coached in 70, 71, and 72, and partway through 72, we weren't doing that well, and I was kind of running out of steam, and I said to Brian Drew, who was the general manager, I said, "Brian, I'm going to take some time off. I think I get somebody to see if they can get this team going. I can't seem to get them going." So anyhow, I left, period, or I got fired, whatever you want to say. They got a new coach and stuff. And then I wasn't doing anything, and Wayne Copeland was coaching the Shooting Stars in this semi-pro league. So he phones me and says, "Do you want to come down and give me a hand?" I said, "Sure." So I went down and helped them out for a month or so. And then they decided to let Wayne go. And they phoned me and said, "Would you coach the team?" And I said, "No," because I said, Wayne got me there, and I said, like, he's a good friend, and I'm not going to take his job. And they said, "Well, we'll phone Wayne and see if it's okay with him." I said, "Well, if it's okay with him, have him phone me and tell me that." So they did, and he phoned me and said, "Bob, do it by all means." So I took over the Shooting Stars, and we started to have some success. They had a girl up on top of on a platform on a pole by the hotel across the street, because we played in Varsity Arena, and she wasn't supposed to come down until we won the game. And the first game I coached, we won, so down she came. Now, she'd been sneaking down before that, so I was told. So anyhow, we had not a bad season. Then I coached them the next year in '73. We did reasonably well, and Bish was coaching Windsor Warlocks at that time, and we beat them the first time we played them, and a couple times, so that kind of was good. He didn't like it too much. And then that league unfolded because in '74 we had the NLL, and Jim was with the Tomahawks, so he called me and asked me if I would be assistant coach, assistant GM, and so on, and I said sure. So we had a decent team, and then in '75 that we didn't draw well, because I remember one night coming in the dressing room, there's a big crowd out there tonight. He said, "Is there?" I said, "Yeah, he just lit a cigar." And so anyhow, we didn't draw. The games were all on TV, and people would tell me, "Gee, that was quite a game last night. Were you at the game?" "No, I watched it on TV." So, oh, okay. So anyhow, the next year, he went to Montreal. The Tomahawks went to Long Island. And some of the players and I went to Boston, and were the Boston Bolts, and I was the GM. Now, I foolishly was going to get a leave or something from my job and go down there, but the owners actually talked me out of it, so that was fine. It turned out to be a good decision. And then I was traveling back and forth 2 or 3 times a week. We got Larry Ferguson to coach. Ro Barrett was our assistant GM, and he was looking after things and would phone me. So then partway through the season, the ownership changed. I never heard much from them, and finally got a phone call, and they said, this was now in mid-June, and they said, "When are you coming down?" And I said, "Well, I'm coming down at the end of June, and you're supposed to be getting me an apartment for my wife and me and the family, and you owe me about $3,000 right now. So when I get the $3,000 and you've got the apartment, let me know and I'll be down." I'm still waiting on that phone call. So that was the end of the Bolts. And so then that was '75. Then I was '76 and '77. No. Where did I go then? I guess I went at '76, I went to the Scarborough Lacrosse Association. And they asked me to come and be a sort of a mentor for coaches. And I said, "Okay, you don't have to be here all the time." So I got on the executive. Then the next year I was at the executive meeting, and everybody said, "You're going to be president." "No, I'm not." I said, "Don't you have to be on the executive?" He said, "We created that position so you could become president." So I became president of the Saints. And I was president from '77, '78, and then I went back to Green Gaels in '79. So it was just 2 years there. But in '77, we won the Founders Cup and the Canada Summer Games, because it was in Newfoundland, and went down and won that there. And then we had to come back to Ontario and play Point Edward for the Ontario Championship. So we were Canadian champs, but we had to win the Ontario. And then in 1989, I went to be coach of the Warriors, Whitby Warriors, Junior A team, and I coached them for that year. And then I had retired from teaching in June, and my son Rob was playing for Brooklyn then, and they went out west to play New West for the Mann Cup. So Mary and I went out to see the games and stuff. And I got back, and this chap by the name of Gord Patterson, who was a VP with the OLA, phoned me and said, "You haven't got your name in." I said, "My name for what?" And he said, "For the tech director at the OLA." I said, "Derek Keenan is the tech director." He said, "No, Derek's resigned. He's going to go and work for the city of Oshawa." And I said, "Oh, how long do I have to get it in?" He said, "Till tomorrow." All right. So I phoned my daughter and told her the story. So she said, "Okay, I'll work it up, and then we'll look at it tonight and we'll get it." So I got it in to the tech director, the OLA, and then I went for the interview, and here's this guy who's just retired with all these young guys. I have the interview, and then a week or 10 days later, I'm talking to Rob, and he says, "Have you heard about the job?" And I said, "No, I don't think I got it, Rob, because I haven't heard anything." Then they phoned me and said they want me in for a second interview. And I said, "A second interview?" And they said, "Yeah." "Oh, okay." And I went for the second interview, and a lady from the ministry was there because we got money from them. And she said to me, how long will you stay at this job? Because you just retired from teaching, didn't you? And I said, yes, I did. And I said, well, if I don't like it, 2 or 3 days. If I like it, I'll guarantee you I'll stay 2 years. I stayed 8 years. So I liked it. It was a great job. And Stan Cochran was and still is the executive director. Stan had played for me. I think he was a little leery of hiring me. So Bish told me, but Bish told him, Bob's a team player, you're the boss, he'll do what you say. So anyhow, I enjoyed my years at the OLA, and then in 97, I retired from there, and that was it. And then in 90, they wouldn't let me coach the Warriors, because as tech director, I worked with coaches. I also worked with referees, and they didn't think that would be a very good combination. Although I see nowadays the tech director does do those things, but I wasn't allowed to, which was fine, because working with, I found out Potsy Burroughs was a referee. I found out that referees are human and they aren't all bad, you know? So anyhow, and then when I left there in 97, my good friend James Bishop phoned me again, I'm calling him a good friend now, and said, why don't you come and be the GM of the Warriors? I said, you have a GM, Jim Brady. He said, no, Jim is leaving, because he was commuting back and forth to St. Catherine. So he said, why don't you put your name in, we'll win a Minnow Cup together, because they had just won in 97. And he said, we've never won one together, and we'll both retire after 2 years. I said, it sounds good, but I'll have to check with Mary. So I went home from work, walk in the door, the phone is ringing, Mary answered it. She says to me, it's Jim. Okay, I go and said, yeah, what's up, Bish? He says, what'd she say? I said, I just walked in the door. I'll phone you back. So anyhow, I said, Jim wants me to go and be the GM of Whitby. What do you think? And as always, she said, go for it. Do what you want. Be good for you. So I phoned Bish. I said, yeah, I'll do it. He said, well then, get your resume in, because you'll have to be interviewed. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. And he said, no. So I put my resume in, and I went to the board of the Warriors, and a couple other guys on the board had put their name in, but they withdrew, and I became the Warrior GM. And then I was either GM, coach, assistant coach, probably water boy, ball boy, whatever, with the Warriors from 98 through to 2013. Yeah, because Jim got killed in a car accident in 98, and I took over as coach, and in 99, and Jeff McComb and Marty Gallis, who had been assistants with Jim, stayed on as assistants. We changed things a bit from the way Jim had done them. We got a few new players, a couple real good midgets and so on, and we won the cup in 99. And we only lost 3 games in 99. We lost 1 in the league to Six Nations, 1 in the playoffs to Six Nations, and 1 in the Minnow Cup to Burnaby. Yeah, so. And then after 2013, I was a director when we won the Minnow again, and then I left at the end of 2013, and that was it with lacrosse as far as being involved. It's hard to say, really. Like, lacrosse is so cyclical. You know, it's up and down, and when I was with the OLA, we were getting new members and new associations all the time and stuff like that. Now it seems to have dropped off a bit, and then that seems the way lacrosse would go. You'd like to think it's going to keep going up, and certainly the Pro League, the NLL, has helped. There's no doubt about that. But minors drop off a bit because, let's face it, there's a lot of activities these days, and volunteers, it's difficult to get volunteers to do stuff. God bless the people who do, because without them there wouldn't be any lacrosse. And but it's very difficult. So I don't know what, I would like to think the future of lacrosse is going to be great, but I really, I'm like everybody else, I hope it is, because, you know, it's in my blood, but whether it will be or not, I'm not sure. My favorite place to play was probably Brooklyn, because we had a great bunch of guys playing there. We had Crawford coaching us, although Wally coached us in the 1 year. We had a bunch of guys there, characters, Elmer Tran and guys like that. It was just a good place to play, a good organization to play for. I mean, they hated me when I played with Port Credit, and they loved me when I played up in Brooklyn, which was kind of fun. And we had a good team. We were in the Mann Cup 3 of the 4 years I played up there. I didn't win it, but we were in the Mann Cup, so that was great. We were all excited, all of us, the first time about going out to the Mann Cup and stuff. And we got excited every year, you know. I had to get time off from school to go because it was in September. And so I phoned our assistant director and told him I'd like a couple of weeks off because I'm going to be in the Canadian Mann Cup Championship and it's out in Vancouver. And he said, I could say just go and you and I are the only ones that know about it, but he said, we'd get caught sure as we do that. So he said, there's a board meeting tomorrow night. I'll take it to the board, Bob, and we'll see what we can do. I said, well, I'll go without pay because this was the first year I'd never played in a Mann Cup. I wanted to play in a Mann Cup. He said, well, you're married. And I said, yeah. He says, you got kids? I said, yeah. He said, you need your paycheck. I said, well, it would be nice. So the next morning about 7 o'clock, he phones me and he says, Bob, you're going to Vancouver with pay. He said, all you have to do is you're on TV or the papers or anything like that, mention that you work for the Scarborough board. And I said, I will. So I went, and then the next time I went, there was already a clause in our contract that said if you were playing in a championship, Canadian National Championship, Worlds, that sort of thing, you could get the time off to go. So I was okay there. A Minto Cup memory, I guess would be 99 because Bish had died. We dedicated the season to him. We had a tremendous season. Like I said before, we just lost 3 games in total. We had a powerhouse team, you know, and Prout and Sally and Derek Suddens and Wes Suddens and Wojtek and guys like that. So we really did have a great team. And it was one of the best teams I ever coached, along with the 85 Founders Cup team in Scarborough that I coached there. We were a great junior B team. We could have been pretty good in junior A too, I think. We went 37-0-1 that year, yeah. And with that team in the 2 years, we were 66-7-1. Yeah, so we were a pretty good junior B team. Whitby won the Minto in 85. We won the Founders. I challenged Whitby to play us for the Minto Cup, but they wouldn't take us up on it. A lot of guys picked on me and referees picked on me. I don't know. I got quite a few penalties because I know in the Redmond stats, I'm about 5th in all-time penalty minutes. Scotty McMichael is 1st. Danny Ladouceur is ahead of me. And I forget who the other 2 guys, probably Johnny Fusco's up in there. But I know I was 5th the last time I checked. I don't check that stat too often. But the check I'm proud about is I haven't played in Brooklyn since '67, and I'm still on the all-time scoring list. I'm about 48th out of 50, but I'm on it after all these years from '67 to now. So I did score a bit, but I did have that reputation. And playing Brampton, we had quite a rivalry with Brampton, and I had a few chats with Gordie Thompson, you know, and there might have been fisticuffs. And the funny one was one night I was checking Gordie, and we were facing, I guess it would be west in the old Memorial Arena, and the play was blowing down because there was a fight in the stands. So I was watching Gordie, because when I was near Gordie, I never took my eyes off him. And I said, what's going on up there, Gordie? He says, 2 jerks are in a fight. I said, oh, really? And he said, "Oh, for God's sakes, it's your old man and my old man." So, oh, okay. So they got that settled down and we went on and played. But he and I had a few dust-ups, and some other people too. But I don't think I deserved all the penalties I got. Well, one that comes to mind immediately is Bobby Allen. I played with and against Bobby, more against than with, because he played with us in a couple. In those days, you could have pickups in the Man Cup, and we picked up a few players, and Bobby was one of them. He played when we played down here, and he went out west with us the one year. So he had, well, you know, he was just so smooth on the floor, and he could do everything really. And then another one was Ross Paulus, and Gaylord too, really, as far as that goes. I played with Gaylord, played against Ross. I played with Gaylord in Detroit. Ross was a big guy, but pretty smooth on the floor. Score, check. Gaylord the same. Gaylord was a little nastier on the floor. And Gaylord never cut anything off his stick. And we used to say, "Why do you use such a long stick?" He said, "Because guys get in closer and then you can really whack them." And some of the other guys, Louis Nickel did. Louis, I played against him and I played with him in Port Credit. And first game I played senior lacrosse was when I was playing junior with the Gales and we were affiliated with Mimico Mountaineer senior team. When 5 of us went up to Peterborough to play in the old bowl up there, Miller Bowl. And they thumped us. But I always remember I had the ball and Lou was checking me. And he said, "Come on, kid." And I said, "I'll go around you like nothing, old man." And suddenly, whack. And I thought my arm was cut off. So that's how I met Lou. And then we played with Lou. And the funny thing was, one time, a night after a game, we had been out for a lot of coffees. And then we went back to Louis' house to have breakfast. We're sitting at the table, and Kay, Lou's wife, said, "You know, Bob, if 7 or 8 years ago anyone had ever told me you'd be sitting in my house at my table eating me cooking breakfast for you, I would have told them they're out of their mind." So anyhow, but Lou was a good guy, and I refereed a bit. I didn't like it. And Lou refereed. Johnny Davis, I admired Johnny, what he could do on the floor. Not a very big guy, which proved a point to be a good lacrosse player, or now they're even saying about hockey players. You don't have to be a big guy. Little guys can do the job, and Johnny could sure do the job. And then some other guys I admired just because they were good players were like Rusty Slater, who played with Peterborough and later with Owen Sound. I played against him when he was playing with Owen Sound. Harry Kazarian played with Owen Sound. Jack Bionda, never played with him, played against him a couple of times. And of course, he was just a magician with a stick, you know. He had that big overhand fake and behind the shoulder and under his leg and whatever he wanted to do, he could do it with a ball. And he was amazing. So those are some of the guys. There's other guys I've probably forgotten, but well, Kenny Crawford. I played with him for about 15 years. He was a draw man. He rarely missed the draw. He was just a tough player. And you knew with Crawford, every game you were getting 110% out of it. Yeah. I remember one in Fergus when I was a kid, and this goes back to equipment. They were playing Peterborough, and Fergus was senior B, and Peterborough was senior B. And a Fergus guy took a shot and hit the goalie right in the face. Goalies weren't wearing masks in those days. He went over to the side of the crease and barfed, got back in the net, and about 5 minutes later, bang in the face again, did the same thing again, went back. It was shortly after that it was mandated that goalies had to wear masks, and for a season or two, they wore like a back catcher's mask, you know. The goalies didn't wear a whole lot of equipment, and then they started bulking up after that. So I remember that. The score, one game I remember with the junior Bs, we shut a team out, 33-0. memorable because it was a shutout, and they're kind of rare in lacrosse. I guess one of the memorable games was because of the way it happened. Was the year we won in '99, we won the Minnow Cup. We were playing on the beach, and we always gave us a tough game, and we were tied with, we were down a goal with 15 seconds or so to go. Joey Tietro shot, the goalie stopped it, went up in the air. He's looking around for the ball, it came down, hit him on the back, went in the net, and tied the game. We went into overtime and we won. So we're walking out after, I'm walking out with Gavin Prout. He looks at me and he says, "You looked worried. What were you worried about? You knew we were going to win." I said, "Yeah, I don't think it was that close, Gav." But anyhow, we did win, and Prout was like that. Gavin was one of the best players I ever coached, and I only coached him for the year. But he wasn't a big guy, but he thought he was 6 foot tall and weighed 200 pounds. So finally, I talked to Neil Maynard, and we had lines in those days, 5 on, 5 off. And I said to Maynard, "I'm going to put you with Prout." And I said, "I want you to keep him out of trouble because I don't want him in the penalty box. We want him on the floor. I want him scoring goals or getting assists, not sitting in the penalty box for 5 minutes. So do you think you can keep him out of trouble?" He said, "I will do it. I'll do it, Bob." I said, "Okay." So after that, whenever Gavin was going to maybe get in a fight, Maynard would go in and he would get the penalty or just get Gav out of there. And we kept him on the floor. So that was kind of memorable. High score, well, with the Scarborough Saints Junior B in '85, we scored in a 20 or 22 game schedule, 533 goals. And we had about 5 guys that were over 50 goals. Yeah, we were a pretty powerful team. And then in '86, we went to Etobicoke, and I took a lot of those kids with me, and we played Junior A, and we met Peterborough in the first round. They beat us 4 straight, but they went out. I don't think they lost a game that year. They went out west and won the Minnow. And when they came back, they phoned me and they said, "Bob, I just wanted to let you know, the toughest series we had all year was with you guys." And I always remember that. I really appreciated that. I think one of the big reasons for that, for the start of it there, was the NLL and the Rock. And being in Toronto, they were filling I guess it'd be Maple Leaf Gardens at that time. And, it was sold out every night, was kind of the place to be. It was a lot on TV about it. And I think that was what got it started. And then a lot of people in smaller towns thought they'd start an association. They got into it. They enjoyed it. As, it's a game that grows on you. I mean, everybody says how rough lacrosse is. And it can be, and it is a tough sport. But I got more injuries out of hockey than I did out of lacrosse. Separated shoulder, hitting the eye with a puck, stuff like that. And I didn't get any of that in lacrosse. Whacked on the arm a lot of times, but that didn't really hurt unless they got you between the glove and the shoulder pad. The guy that used to do that a lot was Billy Castater, and I'd played junior with Castater, and every time he nailed me there, I would just look at him and say, "Billy," and he'd say, "Oh, sorry, Bob." Well, the NLL is expanding this year to San Diego and a team back in Philly, and we were just looking at something last night, and I see Rochester is going to go to Halifax next year, and Buffalo is putting a team in Rochester. So it said, I don't know whether the Bandits are moving there or whether they're putting a new team, I'm not sure. But that'll certainly help, and with a team in the Maritimes, because they have lacrosse down there and they're doing relatively well. So it's good to see that. Hopefully that would grow down there. And it seems to be growing out in the prairies somewhat, and hopefully in Ontario it can spike up again. So the pro gives the guys a place to play and make some money. Yeah. They don't make a whole lot, they don't make millions, but they make, decent money. And it's all, I know people say, well, they shouldn't be paying the major series guys. I mean, we got paid when I played, when we played in senior A, we got paid. Yeah, so it's gone on for a long time. I mean, they get a lot more, But when you look at what we got and compare it to what it would be in today's dollars, we're relatively close, you know. Oh, it reminds me of some great times and some good guys. I had a lot of the Lakeshore guys play with me there. There, I just looking at a picture of Earl McNeil. Earl had a wonderful seasons with us. He could do it all. We had Butchie Keegan played there. So I had a Johnny Cuthbert who played with me with the Gales. A lot of good guys. We played in Varsity Arena, and you know, we drew 15 to 1,800 every game in Varsity Arena. Yeah, so it brings a lot of good memories. I enjoyed my time with the Shooting Stars. We flew to Detroit, or yeah, to Windsor, I should say, to play. There was money. The guys all got paid. We were owned by a tobacco company, McDonald's Tobacco, out of Montreal. So I got paid, I think like the players, I think everybody was getting $25 a game and a box of cigars every month. So that was great. So that's one of my memories of the Shooting Stars. I remember Derek Forbes played for us, and I remember we played in Windsor, and we were walking to catch the bus to come back to Toronto, or to catch the bus to go to the plane to go back to Toronto. And Derek said, "I'm going to stay." And I said, "No, you're not going to stay. We're all going back to Toronto." He said, "No, I want to stay." I said, "No, we're going back to Toronto as a team." And I looked at him, I said, "Derek, I know you can fight. You can kick the tar," I didn't say tar, "you can kick the tar out of me, but we're still going back to Toronto as a team." And he said, "Oh, I understand, okay." And so we came back as a team, and they understood from that point on that we were a team and we traveled as a team. And then one night at practice, he and one of the, I think it might have been Earl, were just passing the ball back and forth, and I was standing fairly close, and he says, "Coach, you might want to move over, but you know I don't catch the ball too well." So, yeah. So I have good memories of the Shooting Stars, yeah. It was great. They were all for us. We got write-ups in the papers after every game, reporters from the Star after every game. I remember being interviewed on TV, and when I went back to school, one of the other principals phoned me, and he said, "My wife and I were out in Saskatchewan on holidays, and we were watching TV, and who do I see on TV but you?" And I was on this program here from Toronto. So yeah, some great memories of the Shooting Stars, yeah. We turned out to be a pretty decent team, and we had a lot of fun, and we worked hard, and we won quite a few games. And we didn't win the championship. I think Morley's team did, because there was Peterborough, ourselves, the Shooting Stars, Brantford, which was Morley, and all the Lakeshore boys except the ones I had, and Windsor. I think those are the four teams, yeah. A couple things that I did in lacrosse that I'm kind of proud of is playing in the Mann Cup finals for Brooklyn, being in the Founders Cup. I know a lot of people kind of look down on Junior B, but it was pretty good lacrosse, and we were a good team. We won the medal in Newfoundland, and we won the championship there. And then in '85, we won the Canadian Championship right in Scarborough. We hosted it. Being in three Minnow Cup teams with the Warriors. Never had won a Minnow Cup before, so it was a thrill to win one, and then two, and then three. So that was great. And then, of course, in 1997, being elected to this hall, the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and being elected to the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And they were kind of exciting. My knee, which I had to have replaced, I still bothers me. But when I go to my chiropractor, he says, Bob, if you had it to do all over again, what would you do? I said, I'd do it all over again. Yeah.